According to President Muhammadu Buhari, he says, and I quote, "We are going to secure this country. We are going to manage it properly. We will continue to improve the situation, security, economy, and fighting corruption." Fighting corruption is one of the cardinal points of this administration. So please give all the necessary support to the anti-graft agencies so as to make Nigeria a better place for us and our children unborn. Hello and thanks for joining us on another episode of The Eagle. My name is Aisha Muhammad.
Imagine a society where everything works. Durable road networks, stable electricity supply, portable water, well-equipped and functional healthcare facilities, quality education for all, affordable housing schemes, social security benefits, job creation, and a lot more that makes life comfortable to live. That is an ideal society. We can only achieve these if we all play our part. Say no to corruption to enjoy these benefits. Kill corruption to save Nigeria. This message is from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC.
On the program today, we bring you a review of the National Democracy Day Anti-Corruption Summit, which was held on 11th June 2019 at Transcorp Hilton, Abuja, where President Muhammadu Buhari said the federal government will strengthen the EFCC and other anti-corruption agencies, while Kagame, Lumumba, others commend anti-corruption fight in Nigeria. Sit back and relax as this will come your way right after this timeout. President Muhammadu Buhari has dropped the hint that his administration was on course to strengthen the capacity of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, and other anti-corruption agencies in Nigeria. This, he said, will result in equipping them with additional material, organizational, and logistical support. The president stated this in his remarks at the National Democracy Day Anti-Corruption Summit organized by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission EFCC with the theme, Curbing Electoral Spending, a Panacea for Public Corruption. Martha Eche has the details on the one-day event.
President Muhammadu Buhari, who disclosed that his administration has commenced stock-taking on progress in the fight against corruption, stressed the need for a rigorous assessment on what needs to be done and devising new strategies to address existing challenges faced in this monster fight. According to the president, the process was kicked off with a recent interaction between the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, PACAC, and all anti-corruption agencies in Nigeria. He said aside the strengthening of the EFCC and all other anti-corruption agencies, the interaction between PACAC and anti-corruption agencies in the country will further lead to the closing of the existing legislative loopholes, facilitate collaboration with the judiciary, strengthen the criminal justice system, enforce effective asset declaration by public office holders, and ensure sanctions by professional bodies against lawyers, bankers, brokers, public officials, and other individuals facilitating corrupt practices. The president further disclosed that part of the discussion is to ensure comprehensive support and protection to whistleblowers, witnesses, and victims of corruption, adopt and formulate the policy of naming and shaming of those who engage in corrupt practices while encouraging and honoring those who do not, and those who educate, mobilize, and encourage Nigerians at the grassroots level to take ownership of the fight against corruption.
As this administration commences, we are taking stock of progress made so far in the war against corruption, assessing what needs to be done and devising new strategies to address existing challenges. I am pleased to inform you that this process has already started with the recent interaction between the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption and all anti-corruption agencies in Nigeria. The outcome of interaction, among others, shall serve as the basis for a more concerted effort by this administration to A, strengthen the capacity of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and other anti-corruption agencies by providing additional material, organizational, and logistic support.
With the pursuit of these, the president said he hoped for better response from Nigerians on the anti-corruption fight of his government. In reference to the theme of the summit, he noted that the topic was most appropriate in the light of past and recent political experiences in Nigeria and in Africa as a whole. The president regretted that Nigeria's recent political experiences have been characterized by the corrupting influence of money on political parties and electioneering processes. This unwholesome practice, he said, has had dire consequences on the nations in subverting the exercise of free choice by voters, elevated corrupt and unprincipled individuals to positions of leadership, and entrenching the structures of democracy devoid of accountability.
The theme for this summit is curbing electoral spending, a panacea for public corruption. This topic is most appropriate in the light of our past and recent political experiences in the country and Africa as a whole. Regrettably, the recent political experiences have been characterized by a corrupting influence of money on party politics and electioneering processes. This unwholesome practice has dire consequences on our nations in subverting the exercise of free choice by voters, elevated corrupt and unprincipled individuals to positions of leadership.
In his keynote address, Rwandan President Paul Kagame said the fight against corruption should be reframed in positive terms as a struggle for transparency, public integrity, and accountability. He stressed that the primary responsibility to act lies with leaders at every level, as while corruption has become a way of life, it is because leaders have made it that way unacceptable. According to him, the absence of politics that values individual integrity, even well-established institutions, are not enough to deter wrongdoing, as has been demonstrated by repeated scandals in advanced economies at the top of international transparency rankings. Therefore, fighting political corruption is just as urgent as fighting economic corruption.
The summit's theme focuses on curbing electoral spending. I look forward to hearing from the experts on strategies for eliminating this form of corruption. However, in order to succeed in the ultimate goal, we have to keep the broader context in mind. That is why I suggest we reframe the fight against corruption in positive terms as a struggle for transparency, public integrity, and accountability. The primary responsibility to act lies with leaders at every level, where corruption has become the norm, a way of life. It is because leaders have made it acceptable, and have made it that way. We tend to focus on the petty corruption of everyday life, while turning a blind eye to the more consequential forms that people only whisper about because The rich and the powerful are the main beneficiaries.
Kagame said diversity, creativity and ambition of Nigerians represent Africa, and achievements of Nigerians at home and in the diaspora make the continent proud. He disclosed that Nigeria has always shown common course with Africa's progress and prosperity, and this does not go unnoticed, showing that Nigeria is truly the engine of Africa's potential.
And I wish to start by calling to mind the greatness of this nation, the diversity, creativity, and ambition of Nigerians represent Africa. The achievements of Nigeria's sons and daughters here at home and in your global diaspora make our continent proud. Nigeria has always shown common cause with Africa's progress and prosperity, and this does not go unnoticed. This country is truly the engine of Africa's potential. This is how we see Nigeria. I hope you know that. We stand in solidarity with your efforts to build on all the assets with which this country has been blessed, and we are invested in your success.
Acting chairman of EFCC, Ibrahim Magu, in his welcome address, noted that President Buhari has always projected anti-corruption as one of the agenda of his government, and as such was hopeful of a clear horizon for the anti-corruption fight as the president begins his second tenure. In reference to the theme of the summit, Magu observed that the principles of democracy have been bastardized over the years by the ruling elite in some countries across the globe, and that Nigeria, in particular, has had a fair share of the unbearable scourge of a chronic elite capture syndrome, which is said is primarily achieved by manipulating the electoral processes using stolen public funds to subvert the wishes of the people. Magu further stated that electoral spending by politicians is often linked to voter inducement in Africa, dubbed local voters buying. In local parlance, noting, however, that whenever one is induced to sell his vote, he automatically loses the moral equilibrium to challenge corrupt tendencies of those elected.
Your Excellency, there is no doubt that I am highly delighted to welcome you here to this summit, which is one of the major programs designed to mark the commencement of the second term of this administration. Remarkably, His Excellency, President Muhammadu Buhari has always projected anti-corruption as one of the agenda of his government. So I have no doubt in my mind that the horizon on the fight against corruption is very clear as we move to the next level. Your Excellencies, the theme of this summit cannot be fully appreciated without a quick look at the concept of democracy. Democracy has been defined, classically described as the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Therefore, election should ensure that the principles of democracy form the cardinal point toward good governance, in which the electorate holds certain leverage, where the elected retain political authority of implementing policies. As such, the aspiration of citizens in any democratic society is good governance. However, the principle of democracy has been bastardized over the years by the ruling elite in some countries across the globe. Nigeria in particular had a fair share of the unbearable scourge of chronic allied capture syndrome. This has primarily been achieved by manipulating the electoral process using stolen words to subvert the wishes of the people. Electoral spending by politicians is often linked to both inducement in Africa and in our local parlance, both buying. Worthy of note is the fact that whenever one is induced to sell his vote, he automatically loses the moral equilibrium to challenge corrupt tendencies of those elected. On the other hand, vote selling by electorate has mostly been due to several factors, including lack of proper political education, enlightenment. Your Excellency, political parties often induce voters with money because they lack appropriate and realistic policies to convince the electorate to vote them into power.
On the other hand, vote selling by the electorate, he said, has mostly been due to factors that include lack of proper political education. According to him, political parties often induce voters with money because they lack appropriate and realistic policies to convince the electorates to vote them into power, thus breeding multi-dimensional adverse effects on good governance and creating gaps for corruption to thrive. Magu said the EFCC under his watch understood this very clearly and for the first time was involved in the process of monitoring illegal cash movements with a view to preventing vote buying during the 2019 elections in Nigeria.
Your Excellency, the post-mortem of the last election suggests that the activities of the EFCC were drastically reduced the prevalence of voter inducement in this country. Your Excellency, this summit is expected to brainstorm and provide strategic solution to the lingering crisis of pre- and post-election malpractices, particularly as it relates to deploying solemn public funds to perpetuate injustice.
The acting chairman disclosed that the commission arrested and arraigned some of the people involved, and so far, some have been convicted, stressing that this undoubtedly indicates a departure from the past. While suggesting that the activities of the EFCC during the 2019 polls drastically reduced the prevalence of vote inducement in the country, the EFCC boss further disclosed that the summit's brainstorming will also proffer strategic solutions to the lingering crisis of pre- and post-election malpractices, particularly as it relates to deploying stolen public funds to perpetuate injustice. He noted that the efforts of the Commission's officers and men culminated in securing multiple convictions and recovering of funds and properties worth billions of naira. The anti-corruption czar stated that convictions secured by the Commission since the beginning of this administration reflect a positive progression, as in 2015, the Commission secured 103 convictions, 194 in 2016, 184 in 2017 and 314 in 2018. From January 2019 to date, the Commission has secured over 406 convictions and recovered several assets worth billions of naira. Despite this record, Magu noted that corruption remained a challenge in the country, observing that the fight against corruption requires a multi-stakeholder approach.
The activities of the anti-corruption agencies in Nigeria have been remarkable since the inception of this administration in 2015. And this is a reflection of President Muhammadu Buhari's determination to completely eradicate corruption in Nigeria. The achievement of the EFCC, for instance, have been very tremendous. The tireless effort of the Commission's officers and men culminated in discovering multiple convictions and recovery of funds and properties worth billions of naira. The commission secured by the commission since the beginning of this administration reflect a positive progression. In 2015, Your Excellency, the commission secured 103 convictions. In 2016, 194, 2017, 189, 2018, 312 convictions. Your Excellency, from January this year to date, we had 406 convictions. It's not a propaganda. Our cases go to High Court. We follow all the processes involved in court. It can be checked.
He said the business environment will never be sustainable if the people remained sympathetic to the destructive act of corruption and urged Nigeria's captains of industries to strengthen their corporate governance policies to reflect practical anti-corruption principles. In further praise of Buhari administration's anti-corruption drive, Magu observed the federal government's Executive Order No. 8 for the Voluntary Offshore Asset Regularization Scheme and the Executive Order No. 6 for the Preservation of Assets Connected with Serious Corruption and Other Related Offences are all policy initiatives that have aided anti-corruption fight. Former head of Kenya's anti-corruption agency, Professor Patrick Lumumba, who offered a review of anti-corruption strategy in Africa and the way forward, urged Nigerians to have a change of heart in the fight against corruption to move the country forward. He said he held the view that the long-term health of not only Nigeria but the continent of Africa demands that the critical majority of the masses must have a change of heart towards anti-corruption fight.
With the fight against corruption, EFCC stands out as one of the best in the continent. And they are the best in the continent not only because the building that houses them is the biggest in the world, but because they have demonstrated by word and deed that corruption can be tackled without sacred cows. We have seen in the short documentary that monies have been recovered from individuals who in other countries are sacred cows and are untouchable. But convictions in and of themselves are not sufficient. I hold the view, and many hold the view, that the long-term health not only of Nigeria but our continent demands that the critical majority of the masses must have a change of heart. And that is why it gladdens my heart that beyond the convictions we are also educating the populace and creating an environment where the children of darkness who are the perpetrators of corruption will not have the oxygen to breathe.
Lumumba notes that corruption undermines democracy, and if Africa continues to punch below its economic and political will, it is because of corruption, and Africa cannot survive if corruption is what is being embraced. Retired Honorable Justice Issa Ayo Salami OFR, former president of the Appeal Court, who presented a paper on the use of public funds in election litigation and the integrity of the judiciary, commended the efforts of the EFCC under the leadership of Magu in the fight against corruption. Salami said the Commission has performed exceedingly well over the years in spite of all odds in confronting corruption from different quarters.
For a display of unwavering commitment, dedication, and determination in the fight against corruption in Nigeria. It is worthy of mention that in spite of all odds confronting them from different quarters, the Commission has performed exceedingly well over the years. No doubt, the fight against corruption requires strong will and dedication, which I believe is not lacking in this instance. Needless to say, the current administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, has equally shown determination and demonstrable character, commitment, and sincerity in the fight against corruption in Nigeria.
On his part, the former chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC), Professor Tahiru Jega, who spoke on curbing electoral spending and voter inducement in Nigeria, the role of regulatory and law enforcement agencies, advocated for urgent review of the existing legal framework in the fight against corruption. Jega said paying attention to strengthening political finance and vote-buying legislations is necessary and should commence immediately. The event had in attendance President of the Republic of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, Acting Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Ibrahim Tanko Muhammad, heads of anti-corruption agencies in Africa, members of the diplomatic corps, service chiefs, religious leaders, media owners and managers, leaders of civil society organizations, among others. Highlights of the event included an exhibition, a poetic drama, a brief documentary showcasing the activities of the EFCC, amongst others. Martha Eche, reporting for The Eagle.
Well, it is expected that the various recommendations made at the summit will be implemented in order to take the anti-corruption fight to the next level. Let us also remind you that this fight should not be left to the anti-corruption agencies alone or the government, but that we all as Nigerians and Africans have to own it. That is the only way the war against corruption can be won. Let's all play our part to have a better Nigeria and a better continent as a whole. And that's all we can take on today's episode of The Eagle. You too can be part of this program by sending your enquiries and suggestions to The Eagle at efccnigeria.org or search for us on Google Plus at Official EFCC or Official EFCCNG@gmail.com. You can like our page on facebook.com/Official EFCC or follow us on Twitter at Official EFCC. And of course, you can visit our Instagram page at Official EFCC. To watch our programs and other activities, please log on to youtube.com/Official EFCC. My name is Aisha Muhammad. I leave you with these parting words from Paul Kagame, who says, "Tolerating corruption is a choice, not an inevitability. It is within our power to end it." So let's join hands with all the anti-corruption agencies for a better Nigeria. Be good ambassadors of your country, shun corruption. Goodbye and God bless Nigeria.